We're asking for justice and a fair form of justice to the ancestors and to the greatest injustice that has ever been done to human beings.
Why should they have to pay now for what an ancient ancestor did? Or why should they apologize for what an ancestor did centuries ago? Why do they still carry that burden?
Oh, it's not a burden at all. You are one of the beneficiaries of that slave trade. So this is not a burden. You should be concerned and you should pay because you today still benefiting from the greatest indignity to a human being, and that is the slave trade. And not only did you benefit during the slave trade and your country develop, but look at what it caused the developing world.
Reparations which we call for the international community to be able to recognize, first and foremost, with that which we ask from each of our children. Say sorry. Say sorry. And mean it.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to this channel. Today we'll be tackling a powerful and important topic that has been making waves across the Caribbean and the world. We'll be talking about the calls of reparations from two prominent Caribbean leaders, that is Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, and Dr. Irfaan Ali, the President of Guyana. Both of these leaders have been outspoken about the need for reparations from Western countries, particularly the former colonial powers, in light of the centuries of faced by the Caribbean nations and Africans due to the slavery and colonialism. Now, you might be asking, why is this such a big issue right now? What exactly are reparations? And why are these leaders pushing for them strongly? In today's video, I will break down the history behind the call for reparations, the significance of what Mottley and Ali are saying, and why this conversation is so important for the Caribbean and other people of color, especially from Africa. So stick around and let's dive into this very important conversation.
The reparations which we call for the international community to be able to recognize, first and foremost, with that which we ask from each of our children. Say sorry. Say sorry. And mean it. And after you say sorry, recognize that the future of the world is not possible without the stability of Africa and its diaspora. For as long as hypocrisy and double standards remain, it will be impossible to secure stability and peace in any nation across the earth.
Why should somebody who maybe had an ancestor 7 or 8 generations ago, long before they were a twinkle in their great-great-great-great-grandparents' eye, why should they have to pay now for what an ancient ancestor did? Or why should they apologize for what an ancestor did centuries ago? Why do they still carry that burden?
Oh, it's not a burden at all. You are one of the beneficiaries of that slave trade. So this is not a burden. You should be concerned and you should pay because you today are still benefiting from the greatest indignity to a human being, and that is the slave trade. And not only did you benefit during the slave trade and your country develop, but look at what it caused the developing world. During slavery, resources was used to build your country, build up your capacity. You were able to then become competitive. You were able to invest in mechanization, and developing countries like ours were left behind. So you should be very concerned because you are a prime beneficiary of the exploits of slavery.
One of the points you're going to be making today is about our royal family. And you feel that it's not just about the finances involved here in terms of reparations for slavery, it's about the gestures. And you think that the British royal family should make a big gesture, don't you? What do you mean? Hand over a palace to your country?
Well, we don't want the British to hand over a palace that we built. You know, if you go into many of the palaces in Britain, you will see the lovely green heartwood from Guyana. You will see the sweat, tears, and blood of the slaves who were exploited.
So what do you want?
And the revenue that was earned from their exploitation. So we're not asking for a palace. We're asking for justice and a fair form of justice to the ancestors and to the greatest injustice that has ever been done to human beings.
We look forward to
We're not asking for palaces. You can enjoy the palace, and when we visit you, we'll also enjoy it.
The reparations that we call for, beyond sorry, must be for fair access and development and compensation, because we each started the journey of independence with a chronic deficit. A deficit of resources, a deficit of fairness, a deficit of opportunity. And it is up to us, many of us in the second and third generation of independence, to be able to frame out fairly in a mature conversation what those reparations must look like if we are to attain justice and to inspire the young people of this world that good must always prevail over evil. But it is not only the reparations that we ask from the international community, because we ourselves must repair the damage that was foisted on us. The notion that transit visas, begging for them, must be the lot of our people in order to move across this world cannot be something that gives us satisfaction. To go east and to go west, we are first forced to go north. It is not right. And it is not beyond the heads of government and heads of state, of the region, of the Caribbean community, and of the continent of Africa to determine that we must stop talking about, but simply do what is necessary to build the air bridges and sea bridges to guarantee that we control our destiny. I ask us to reflect on this because it is this simple act, apart from our music and our culture and our food, that will guarantee that it is not simply heads of government and heads of state that will meet in Accra or Bridgetown, but it is ordinary people who will be able to trade and to move from the closest point of Dakar to the closest point of Bridgetown, to be able to open up the opportunities that technically ought to be available not just simply through the Africa Free Trade Area or the CARICOM single market and economy, but through the combined opportunities provided by both.
To understand the calls for reparations today, the first thing we need to look at or understand is the history of the Caribbean and the Africans. The Caribbean has a long and painful history tied to the slavery and colonialism. During the 17th to the 19th centuries, European colonial powers like Britain, France, Spain, and the Netherlands were heavily involved in the transatlantic slave trade. Millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homes. They were placed on ships and taken to the Caribbean to work on the plantations, mainly growing sugar, coffee, and other cash crops. This was a time of brutal exploitation, where the enslaved Africans had no rights, no freedom, and were treated as property. The European colonizers made vast amounts of wealth from this system of slavery. A lot of the work they were doing, the sugar that they were getting there, they were exporting back to their countries. This enriched their countries for hundreds of years. But what did the Caribbean get out of it, or what did the Africans get out of it? It was pain, suffering, and exploitation. Families were torn apart, and it was just sad. Cultures and traditions were destroyed, and the effects of this legacy still linger up to this day in the form of poverty, inequality, and underdeveloped in the Caribbean nations and African nations. Slavery was officially abolished in the 19th century, but the impact of colonialism didn't disappear overnight. Instead, it left the Caribbean nations and the African nations in a state of dependence on the colonial powers, without the resources to truly rebuild. And this is where the issue of reparations comes into play. This is what Dr. Irfaan is saying to one of these interviews. It was in the international media station, and the interviewer was wondering why now they are still calling for the reparations, for the Western people to say sorry and to pay them in form of finance and other forms. And it is because the effects were so adverse of what the colonial powers or colonial masters did, right from the slavery period to the colonialism period, the effect is very adverse. They took our minerals, they killed people, etc. The second person that we need to talk about is Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley. She is one of the leading voices on this issue, and she has been very vocal to advocate for the reparations, arguing that the Caribbean nations and Africans have suffered tremendously due to colonialism and slavery, and now it's time for the former colonial powers to take responsibility. Mottley calls are not just about money. She's asking for meaningful reparations, financial and otherwise, that will benefit the people of the Caribbean and Africans. She wants investments in education, healthcare, infrastructure, and sustainable development in the region of Caribbean and in Africa. She's also calling for the debt relief for the Caribbean nations and Africans, as many of these countries still carry the financial burden of colonialism. Yes, there are some countries that are having it rough. Some have even gone to the east, or rather they have decided to look for loans from China. And as we speak, some countries right now, their airports have been taken. Some countries belonging to the people of color, their airports are now being run by some of these current superpowers. It is because of some of these effects that come up or came up out of colonialism and the slave trade. In a speech at the United Nations, Mottley once said that the Western world has gotten rich of the backs of the enslaved Africans. Her message is clear. It's time for the West to acknowledge the harm that was done and to pay back what is owed. But Mottley calls for reparations go beyond just the Caribbean. She is positioning the Caribbean as part of the global movement of justice, one that includes Africa and other regions that have been harmed by the legacy of slavery and colonialism. She wants the West to understand that reparations are not just about the past. They are also about the future. Reparations, she argues, can help address the long-standing social, economic, and political inequalities that were created by slavery and colonialism. Talking about the Guyanese perspective from Dr. Irfaan Ali, who has also been pushing for the reparations for the legacy of colonialism. For example, in Guyana, which is one of the unique countries because it is part of the Caribbean nation, yet it is in Southern America. And it is one of the richest countries because recently they discovered oil. And it is said that within 10 years, they'll be among one of the richest countries because their GDP is going up and up. The trajectory of their GDP is going up day by day.
Over the next decade, 2 decades, it is expected that there will be $150 billion worth of oil and gas extracted off your coast. It's an extraordinary figure, but think of it in practical terms. That means, according to many experts, more than 2 billion tons of carbon emissions will come from your seabed, from those reserves, and be released into the atmosphere. I don't know if you as a head of state went to the COP in Dubai.
Let me stop you right there. Do you know that Guyana has a forest forever that is the size of England and Scotland combined? A forest that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon? A forest that we have kept alive? A forest that we have kept alive?
Does that give you the right? Does that give you the right to release all of this carbon?
Does that give you the right to lecture us on climate change? I am going to lecture you on climate change because we have kept this forest alive that stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon that you enjoy, that the world enjoy, that you don't pay us for, that you don't value, that you don't see a value in, that the people of Guyana has kept alive. I am not finished as yet. I am just not finished as yet, because this is the hypocrisy that exists in the world.
In Guyana, the slavery and colonial exploitation left deep mark on the country's development. The British colonizers profited from the forced labor and enslaved Africans, and later brought in indentured laborers from India and China. After slavery was abolished, they brought in the indentured laborers. Both groups, the slaves and the indentured laborers, faced oppression and exploitation. And today, Guyana continues to feel the effects of those historical injustices, because you'll find that in Guyana, there are people who you might think they are Indians, but they are Guyanese. It is because of when they came in as indentured laborers and they were being paid peanuts. If they were paid well, maybe they could have gone back to India and wherever other places that they came from, but majority of them were from India. President Ali calls for reparation is also a call for justice and acknowledgement of the wrongs done to the people of Guyana and the Caribbean. He is asking for reparations in the form of both financial compensation and reparative development, particularly in areas like education, infrastructure, and healthcare. What's especially important about Ali's approach is that he is emphasizing the need for reparation as part of broader global conversation about colonialism's lasting impacts. He is calling for the West to take responsibility, not just by offering apologies, but by taking concrete actions that can benefit the Caribbean in the long term. Why are these reparations important? Both Mia Mottley and Irfaan Ali are very vocal about reparations. And some people might wonder, why ask for reparations now? Is it too late? It has been years and years after all these difficulties, or after all these shenanigans. Well, the truth is that the consequences of slavery and colonialism are not just things of the past. They are very much present today. The wealth of European nations grew significantly during the colonial period, while many Caribbean nations and African nations were left far behind. Today, many Caribbean nations are still struggling with high levels of poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment. The social and economic inequalities that exist in the Caribbean are rooted in this history of exploitation. Reparations are not just about financial compensation. They are about acknowledging the pain and suffering that was caused and making a real effort to repair the damage. It's about justice, fairness, and creating a more equal and just world. It is also about providing future generations with the resources and opportunities they need to thrive. As Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley has said, the scars of colonialism remain with us. Reparations would provide an opportunity to address those scars and create lasting positive change. The call for reparations is part of a larger global conversation about addressing the wrongs of the past. It is not just about the Caribbean. It's about countries and peoples all over the world who have been affected by slavery and colonialism. From Africa to the Americas to Asia, the legacy of colonialism is still very much present. Caribbean leaders like Mia Mottley and Irfaan Ali are not just speaking for their nations, but they are speaking for a global movement that seeks justice for all people who have been harmed by colonialism. This movement is gaining momentum, and it's clear that the Caribbean is playing a crucial role in bringing this issue to the forefront of global discussions. Even though there have been calls for reparations and it is gaining support, it is not an easy battle. It is not easy at all. Some critics are arguing that the West should not be held responsible for the actions of what happened years and hundreds of years ago. Others are saying that reparations will be difficult to implement. But Mottley and Irfaan Ali and other leaders in the Caribbean and Africa are not backing down. They know that it's a long fight, but it's one worth fighting. They are calling for real change, for real accountability, and for justice that can benefit the future generations. So in conclusion, it is clear that the issue of reparation is about much more than just financial compensation. It's about acknowledging the wrongs of the past, taking responsibilities for them, and working together to build a more just and equal future. Prime Minister of Barbados, Mottley, and the President of Guyana, Irfaan Ali's calls for reparations are just the beginning of a larger conversation that the Caribbean is leading. This is a fight for justice, for fairness, and for the future of the Caribbean people. So what can we do as individuals? We can stay informed, share these important conversations, and support the movement for reparations. The struggle for justice is not over, and every voice counts. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you found this video helpful or interesting, don't forget to like, share, subscribe for more discussions on the topics that matter to you. You can leave down your comments and thoughts below this video. I'd love to hear what you think about the issue of reparations and the role of the African and the Caribbean in the global conversation. Until next time, God bless.